Hey guys, welcome back to the channel today. So in my previous video, Brent's truck over here. So that's a project that we have going on, currently waiting on parts. So may not have a video for that this week. If I can, I will, but we'll see how that goes. Depends on when the parts show up. So today, I'm going to go ahead and show you some differences between an OBS 7.3 and a Super Duty 7.3. So this is the 99 and up 7.3. This is a 97 and down 7.3. This one specifically is a 96, 97. So there's serial numbers that break down changes in the 7.3 series, and I will list those for you here. So there's multiple differences in and amongst those serial numbers. So whenever you're looking up your engine, you could have a 94, 95, 2001, any year. Those differences are in amongst those years. So 94, 95 are generally the same. You could get a 96 truck with a 95 engine. You could get a 97 truck and it'll be different than a 96 truck. These are multiple, numerous little differences. However, your biggest changes are from 95 to 96. The 96 engine shares a lot with the 99 and up engines as far as high pressure oil pumps and timing covers. However, the timing covers are not the same. Those are also broken down into different serial numbers, as well as the oil pans. The pickup tube has changed sides. And then also, the oil pan is different on a Super Duty truck from an OBS truck. So when you're ordering parts, you need to make sure that you know what serial number your engine is, and that serial number can be found by the oil filter. There is a flat machine spot on the block there where the oil cooler mounts. I'll go ahead and show that to you here in this video, and that will tell you the serial number of your engine. Most of the time, there is a sticker right here on the front of the high pressure oil pump reservoir. I'm going to look and see if it's on this one still. It may not be, but that is your serial number. Most of the time they're gone. Unless somebody really took care of the engine and didn't peel any stickers off or lose stickers just through wear and tear, that sticker is your serial number. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take the oil filter off of this. I've already drained the oil out of it, and we're going to pull this fan clutch off. So the one tool a 7.3 guy should always have is this oil filter wrench. This one's a Craftsman. Get these anywhere, they're adjustable. But these really grab onto the 7.3 oil filters. And I've had them where you put them on normal and they just tighten up over time. And then I've had some where you put them on normal, they come off normal. But this takes them off every time. You don't have to shove a screwdriver through it or anything like that. And you don't have to worry about them slipping. They grab a hold really well. I've never had a problem with one of these. The only time I had a problem with one of these was on a junkyard motor, in which case I was taking the oil cooler off anyway, and I put it in a vise and spun the oil cooler and it came right off. Just didn't have a good enough grip on it. So we're going to go ahead and let that drain a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and pull off this fan clutch. So we'll refocus the camera here over here because this is where we're going to be working. I'd said in a previous video about the Lyle fan clutch remover. So this is the 1 7/8" wrench for this, and then obviously the bar for it, and then also a hair hammer. So you take it like so. These don't matter which way you hit them because they can hit either way. You can hit into the throat or not into the throat. It doesn't matter. So it's on the fan clutch. Just that simple. Done. It's loose. So I usually pull the air hammer off of here, set it to the side. Set this off to the side as well. As you can see, all of the dirt falling out of here since we knocked it loose with the air hammer. And another difference is the Super Duty 7.3s have a plastic fan. The OBS ones have a metal one. A lot of guys think the plastic one's an upgrade. I've never messed with it. So that's something that, you know, you can do on your own for research. Just like that, fan clutch is off. Okay, now that we have the fan off of this one here, you can see they look a little different. It's a little harder to tell on Brent's truck here because everything's painted and clean. However, if you notice, these look like the same water pumps. It's because they pretty much are. So in 95, they changed the water pumps. So 95 does not have this pipe here. This is all part of the water pump itself. And this metal tube is removable on the 96 and up trucks. So that is something that you'll see a similarity between these two. However, that does not mean that every OBS truck has that. There is a difference. Once again, following into the serial number issues, they changed with serial numbers. So you'll see the power steering pump is still on the left side of the engine. You have a vacuum pump here. The Super Duty does not have a vacuum pump. There's no vacuum pump because the Super Duties ran a hydro boost system factory. So all the diesel trucks that are F-250s, 350s, 450s, and 550s in the 99 and up Super Duty era don't have a vacuum pump on the engine because they ran the electric vacuum pump. And that can be seen on all of my 7.3 trucks that I have. I've installed hydro boost and I run a electric vacuum pump on those. So that is why you don't see a vacuum pump on this engine over here. So one other thing you're going to notice is the AC compressors on the passenger side and the alternators on the driver's side, and the OBS is flipped. So that makes a difference. If you are running a Super Duty engine in your OBS, yeah, you can run the Super Duty accessories. That's not a problem. The only problem you run into is the AC lines are in the wrong spot. Your electrical wiring is in the wrong spot. So you have to run the Super Duty wiring for the alternator. However, that doesn't fix the AC problem. So it's easier just to keep the OBS accessories when you change up to a newer motor. And then also, if you want to run the newer style power steering pump. So this one still has the older style power steering pump on it that is very, very similar to the OBS one. I do believe it's even the same. The only thing that's different is the reservoir on the back, and I'll show you that also. So when you want to switch to a newer style power steering pump with a remote reservoir, you'd want to find something off of a 7.3 van. Those have that remote reservoir and give you that different style pump that's a little bit easier to access and a little bit easier to install. But on the front, that's pretty much the only major differences, obviously, other than the dual tensioner. This dual tensioner can be added to an OBS truck, and they did have a TSB on that with issues with the belt and tensioning system. So you could have an OBS truck with this dual tensioner. A lot of guys call it an upgrade. I've never dealt with it personally, so I've never had the need to try it. All of my stuff has been fine, but this is something that you can do to an OBS engine. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the camera and show you a couple differences on the sides of the motor and then also on the backs of the motor with the turbos and also in the valley. The one thing I forgot to mention was the upper radiator hose is different on these. The Super Duty uses a very, very short thermostat neck and this very short radiator hose. So Brent's truck here has the short radiator hose adapter on here for the diesel site upper. The only issue is this normally would be a tin upper and it would come to about here where the radiator hose would come up and over to the radiator. But we'll go ahead and look at this OBS one first. So as you can see here, the way everything's set up in the top here is completely different. So I'm going to run over to the Super Duty one and show that to you real quick here. My video editing skills aren't the best, so I can't give you a side-by-side just yet. I haven't learned how to do that. So as you can see, it's very, very different in the valley of these engines. Obviously, the intake is very different. We have a stand core relay on here as well. And then this solenoid here for the Super Duty is for the intake heater, which is removed on this truck. So that is something that the Super Duties have that the OBS trucks do not have. Something else to note here is the high pressure oil lines on these trucks are fittings. They are wrenched fittings. There's no quick connects or nothing like that. You also have different under valve cover harnesses. So that would be this plug and this plug here. So those are different to the Super Duty as well as an OBS. So I can come over here and show you that on this side of the engine here. So as you can see, there's only one main plug here, and it's hard to see the high pressure oil fitting here, but they are called an STC fitting. They are quick connects. I've never seen them be quick. I hate them. I usually change them out when I work on a Super Duty truck, and it makes life so much easier to use. So let's get into the timing covers here. As you can see, the timing covers and the reservoirs for the high pressure oil pump, they are different. The Super Duty one has a top plate which is removable, so it's a little bit easier to access the high pressure oil pump gear. You don't need to get down in here and actually take the whole reservoir off. However, from here down, the timing cover is virtually the same. I need to dig into that and see what is actually different on those, because I do know that they are different, but I can look that up and see how different they really are. But I do know that the 96, 97 OBS trucks are able to use the 99 to 03 high pressure oil pumps. However, 94, 95 has their own oil pumps. Now I'm talking high pressure oil pumps. So other than those, you have a very, very different fuel bowl setup up here. This is actually bolted to the timing cover, which is another reason this whole top is different. It's bolted to that reservoir, whereas the OBS one is bolted straight to the valley floor. And there's two bolts down there that hold this thing. There might be three. It's been a long time since I've removed a fuel bowl. And then obviously I mentioned the intakes being different. This is a factory style intake with a boost adapter put in there. And then the 99 to 03 truck is obviously intercooled, so that's the factory one there. So some other differences you're going to run into is the turbo. So as you can see, this is a vacuum operated waste-gated turbo. These turbos are very, very similar to the OBS turbos. They are not the same, and doing one of these is not necessarily considered an upgrade for an OBS. So we can go ahead and show you this whole turbo here. It's a little more involved than the OBS turbo, which is here. I'll go ahead and move this out of the way so you can see. So the OBS turbo is a little bit different. The Super Duty turbo suffers the same fates as the OBS turbos as far as the exhaust back pressure valves. And as you can see here, see if I can get some light in there, you can see that that is leaking. You can see how it's all wet. So that will leave you lots and lots of issues. So that's why I say to get rid of them. As you can see, all of this oil on the back of this engine, can almost guarantee it is from the exhaust back pressure valve leaking. And you can even see how much oil is up here even. And that's all because the way that the draft works when you're driving the truck, it pulls air up from the bottom like this and pulls that oil vapor up onto everything and just makes a mess. So obviously with a different turbo, you have different up pipes. These are your factory style up pipes. The OBS up pipes are very, very similar. They use a donut gasket design. The pipe will slide in and out of the donut at the top to allow for heating and cooling expansions. And Brent's truck here has the bellowed up pipes. These bellows provide the heating and cooling expansion instead of letting the donut do that job. Keeps the pipes from wearing out and they last a little bit longer. So these are these are the factory style, and you can see there's a little bit of soot here. So these are leaking. So we'll be changing those on this truck also. And another thing that's changed between the OBS and the 7.3 as far as external is the manifolds. So I do know that the manifolds are different. I've never tried to take a Super Duty turbo and put it on an OBS engine. It's not something that I have done. It's not something I'm going to do. It's either one or the other. I'm either buying a Super Duty stuff or I'm buying OBS stuff. And as you can see, they're very, very, very similar. Another thing, I said I took the oil filter off. It's because we're going to be tearing this engine down. I took the oil filter off, drained it, and then I reinstalled it just to keep everything out of there. So I had said about a serial number. So let's see if we can get in here and see this serial number. It's going to be hard to see. So you have a serial number on here, and the VIN is on here also. The last couple of the VIN are on here. And it looks like this one says 483253. So this is a 483,253. So that is the serial number for this engine here. And these will change how they're stamped in the block depending on the age of them. And then since we're down here, the motor mounts are also different. As you can see, this came from a rusty truck, which is why it's sitting here. So the engine mounts are actually different for the Super Duty trucks, as well as the perches that go on the block here. And then, like I said, the oil pans are different. And what I found really interesting is there's still a sticker on this oil pan telling you how to install the oil filter. I thought that was really interesting. I've never seen that before, left on a 7.3 oil pan. So another thing you can see here is how pitted these manifolds are. This is due to the fact that in 1996, Ford got rid of the inner liners, the supplemental inner liners that are on the inner fenders. So I'm going to come over here to this truck because I don't think I've put these ones in yet. So as you can see here, there's no rubber flap here, and there should be. I haven't put them on in this truck yet. The passenger side is much, much worse. However, if you have a 96 or a 97 truck, it would benefit you greatly to take and get a piece of thin rubber, maybe 3/8 of an inch thick, 1/4 inch thick, something that's a little bit stiff. You could even do thinner than that. And you've already got the holes. So there's a hole here for the flap, and then there's one down here. So you can actually pin that on, go behind the shock tower, and that will actually keep a lot of corrosion off of your engine, and especially this side with the power steering lines. So the other side is even more open, and I would show you that, but there's some stuff in the way over there. But yeah, that's something that you can add to your truck to help preserve your engine. So like I said, we got real nice manifolds on Brent's truck here. He replaced these. If you're going to be replacing your manifolds, I highly suggest using Ford parts. Do not buy the Dorman ones. They are very, very thin, and I've seen them blow out. And when they blow out, they will generally melt your heater box and possibly cause a fire in your truck. So that's something I don't recommend doing. And like I said, the Super Duty didn't have the liners on the inside of the fender wells. And you can just see how crusty that manifold is. And thankfully, this truck was oily enough that the heads didn't rot out. So I actually had an engine with 100,000 miles on it with holes in the heads here, 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 and there. As soon as you hit it with a needle scaler, there was nothing there. Gone. All because there was no flaps on the inner fenders to protect the hot engine from the cold salt water when driving in the winter. So some other little subtle differences you're going to run into here is this is your exhaust back pressure tube on a 7.3. It has a little bracket mounts to the high pressure gear oil cover, and it runs down here to the manifold right here. So as you can see on the OBS truck here, still to the same place on the manifold, but it goes a different spot. It doesn't come to the high pressure cover here. It actually comes up to the top, and it's up here. Driven diesel actually makes a high pressure gear cover that goes on here that's O-ringed instead of having to use the gray Ford RTV on this. So if you are doing any servicing on your truck frequently, if you're chasing problems, if you're having issues, you can buy that driven diesel cover. It actually comes with a back pressure relocation tube. So you could actually put the back pressure tube here if you wanted to, which I've done on my 95. And I did that to free up some room up here, especially with the way that the boost fullers ran and the amount of boost the truck makes. So something else you probably noticed is the crankcase vent. I call this a dog box. This routes up into the intake factory. So that does that on both Super Duty and OBS. We have this one flipped around. So now it's called a draft tube. So you're not pumping any oil vapor directly into the turbo, which can cause you problems over time. So we talked a little bit about the power steering pump being different. So you have a return here and a return here. On the F-Superduty trucks of OBS era, you also have this return and this return. I do believe this return is on the back though. And it is for the Hydro Boost and the power steering box. So Ford's thinking on this was that they return at different rates. They didn't want to have suction issues, I do believe. So they ran a dual return. I've been running a Hydro Boost on my truck for a long, long time with a teed return. So you just have a single return and two lines going into one. So I've never had any issues with that. I've had good brakes, good steering. So that is a difference on these trucks, but it's not something you necessarily need to have for Hydro Boost. So just wanted to cover these a little bit with you, describe some differences between the OBS trucks and the 7.3 trucks. They're very, very similar, but a little bit different. However, some things that are very, very nice about these trucks is your passenger head, driver's head, they're the same head. So like you have a heater adapter here, heater hose adapter right here. So you have that port on the driver's side head also. And since it's flipped around, it would be here. So you can see there's a plug in there. So left, right, both the same head. Makes life easy, just some different fittings that you are interchangeable between both. So that's very, very nice. So if you need one head, if say your passenger side head rotted out, you don't need a passenger head, you just need a 7.3 head. And that's very, very nice. But one thing we want to talk about here is you have some differences as far as internal. So this truck here, I do believe it was a forged engine truck. So that has forged rods. In 2001 sometime, and this also depends on your build date and also depends on your serial number of your truck. So both of those should get you close to know if you have powdered metal rods or forged rods. All OBS trucks have forged rods unless somebody changed it. However, all Super Duty trucks could have one or the other. There is a split in the 2001 model year, and you could have powdered metal rods or you could have forged rods. It all depends on the build date of the truck and the serial of the engine. So that serial number makes a big difference when you're buying a 7.3. However, powdered metal rods are like the MDF of the steel world. So basically, powdered metal, compressed, glued together, so to speak, and then machined out or pressed into a form that is ready to use that just needs the bores machined. So they're not very strong. Ford decided to cheap out on us on that one. Not sure why, but those aren't any good. Nobody wants them. They're good for, I do believe, like 400 horsepower, maybe 5. I never looked into it. It's always been on my mind. If it's powdered metal, it's junk. So I don't even bother with it. So that's something to keep in mind with that. So that's also something to know. But these engines, blocks are pretty similar, except your 94, 95 blocks are a little bit weaker. They're notorious for cracking. Haven't figured that one out yet. When I bought my silver 95 truck, it had a new engine put in it when I bought it. It suffered from the cracking. They said it had froze and popped a freeze plug, but I'm wondering if it actually cracked and then just popped the freeze plug. The dealership I bought it from put a brand new remanufactured Ford engine in it when I bought it, and that motor ran great for a long time. It's actually a 97 block that's in it. But your differences are, there's a thicker casting on the top of the block here that runs along the top of the head, and then there's a little bit more webbing in between the rocker boxes. So I can show you a picture of that so you can see the differences, and I'll go ahead and throw that up there for you so you can see. So something else we're going to talk about here is your common fuel and oil leaks. So here's your fuel lines that go into the heads. This is the back. These are very inaccessible when it's in the truck. And the other one, not real sure it is on the Super Duty here, but on the OBS one, which is right here, then you can see the OBS one over there. So we're going to come back over to this engine here. It's a little bit easier to go over. So like I said, you want to be very, very careful with these fittings here, because this piece of cast iron that's here, part of the head, it can crack when you remove this line. I had it happen to me. This cast iron is not very thick right here. So what happens is when you get this fitting, it's very, very tight. It's been in there for who knows how long. However, when you go to break that loose or try to tighten it and maybe loosen it, you will have the possibility to crack this cast. Like I said, I've done this before. I've taken a fitting off, and when it broke free, it actually cracked the block because that's what broke and let the fitting come out of the head. So that is a worry point for me when you're doing a fuel system in a truck. So if you don't want to mess with this too much, and to be honest with you, you don't need to mess with these unless you're doing big, big, big power. And guys will tell you all the time that if you do anything other than stock, these aren't big enough, but I've never had an issue running a factory style fuel system on the OBS with a mild upgrade. So they actually make fittings. They actually make fittings to use the rear banjo bolt and feed lines if you don't want to get into that. So another thing here is, here's your oil rail. This is the oil rail for the heads. There's one on each side, one here. Each head holds about a quart of oil in these rails, and these rails can get up to 3,000 psi. So that's a lot of pressure in here. So guys will get an oil leak in the back, and it'll be very, very severe. And generally it's one of these, if it's really severe and in the back, if not the back pressure valve leaking horribly. So if it tends to be one of these, that can be a real terrible thing to change outside or inside the truck, because those are torqued to about 65 foot-pounds with red Loctite all the way around the threads, and they are a fine thread. So these are something I recommend to change if you're pulling your 7.3 out of your truck. It's just preventative maintenance. Another thing here is you have your fuel rail here. We'll use this one a little bit cleaner on this side. This is your fuel rail. It's a quarter drive. This is obviously a 1/2-inch drive, but there's an O-ring on here. You can do a larger banjo bolt there because that's the style it is, because this rail runs right up through here to your fuel line, both sides. You can kind of see it over here. So you can get bigger ones. I do believe Riff Raff sells those. On the back of these trucks, you have a ground strap right here. This ground strap is on both places on the OBS and Super Duty trucks. The 4R100 dipstick bolts to, I believe, the bell housing bolts. I just don't know if it's this one or the one that's down here. But it does belt to the bell housing, whereas the OBS one bolts right to the head there. And like I said, there should be a ground strap there, but we don't have that just yet. So we'll get that put on once we get there. These trucks, these engines do have a lot of similarities. The only thing is, when you're changing stuff from OBS to Super Duty or vice versa, if you're building an engine, when you change something, you need to make sure that you change the right parts. So, hey, I got a 7.3 sitting over here and I want to put that timing cover on that engine. Okay, well, if that's a 96 engine and that's a 95 engine, you have to swap the timing cover, the reservoir. You have to swap the high pressure oil pump. You have to swap the oil pickup in the pan. And I do believe you have to swap the oil pan itself because the pickup is from one side to the other. So you can't just pick a timing cover. You have to pick the right timing cover. And like I said, those serial numbers make those differences. So that's something to keep in mind. So you can mix and match with these, but you need to make sure that you mix and match the right pieces and parts. So there's things that are grouped together that need to be changed with it. So keep that in mind. And like I said, the serial number makes a big difference. That's something you need to keep with you as a serial number. So that's something handy to have. And there's actually books out there that outline these differences between all the serial numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and try to give you some of that information as well, as far as the major breakdowns. And then obviously you have minor changes in amongst all those breakdowns. So if you need to find something, make sure you do the research on it before buying to make sure it's the right part. So I want to thank you guys for following along with me today. I know that this video is a little bit boring, but it's more informative than anything. So going to try and keep this all OBS content, but we do have this truck here that we're going to be doing a lot of work to. It's obviously in pieces, so that's another rebuild just like Brent's over here, just a newer truck. So we're going to try and cover a little bit with that, try to get a little bit outside the wheelhouse and show you how we do stuff around here. So you'll follow this project and this project. They'll be simultaneous, so you'll be getting videos amongst them both all of the time. So if you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you'll come back and see more of my videos, and we'll catch you on the next one.